the names of things don't really interest me at the outset. I just want to get in there and get to the experience somehow. And so in my impatience, I kind of, it's more of an intuitive sense of finding my way. And it's only afterwards, or as I've grown older and I've learned patience, that in slowing down, in general, you kind of open up to different complexities or different kind of nuances. And so the names of things then become interesting when you've got more time, I suppose, or more kind of a mental space to become interested in them. And it's always, if you have a name for something and you then you kind of have attached it to the experience, I think it's a way of just becoming more attuned to differences. And I suppose in light of that, when I was younger, I was probably more interested in how things were the same. And as I've got older, I've become more interested in how things are different. And so the different devices that are available to me to kind of key how things are different would be to become more aware, say, of the names of black. And through thinking about the different names of black, I wonder how that affects my perception of black. And then my ability to kind of work with black in a more nuanced way, rather than a more sort of energetic and needful way that so characterized much of my sort of engagement sort of earlier on.
I mean, Rika talked about absence and presence and the shadow, the shadow, and obviously that's something that is a continuum with the work. And I wondered whether you could talk a little bit about your engagement with the shadow, because it seems to have, maybe it's the context that has changed our understanding of the way that you're using it, but it seems to me that in those earlier works, the idea of the shadow as emphasizing the object, we're now seeing it in a slightly different way. Is that just me, or is it something that you're aware of, that there is a kind of metaphysical quality to the work?
Well, I've always thought of myself as a still life painter, and I was talking to some of the women who are going to be working as interns in the show today, so we'll be hearing a little bit of a repeat in this. But I think the story that I sort of can identify or tell myself about sort of starting off, as it were, linking to this idea of the object and the shadow and the notion of love as it happens, stems from my foundation year as an art student, when one of my tutors set a very simple and seemingly banal lesson, but that for me was to have really long-term repercussions, and that this person said, I want the class to choose an object that you love and to do a drawing of it. And this word love seemed unusual and exciting and personally very stirring. And so the object that I chose to draw at that time, as a young sort of student having left my hometown in Vancouver to study art in London, was a seashell that I brought with me from Vancouver. And I chose the seashell because it was very beautiful, and so visually it already excited a sort of a sense of pleasure about it. But for a simple object, it was quite complex, in that it was connecting me to a place I'd left behind, so it had a very positive kind of charge and one of connection. But it also was reminding me that in fact I'd left somewhere that was special to me, so it stirred up a sense of loss and of disconnection. So quite contradictory feelings of both connectedness and disconnectedness, or absence and presence within the one object. Anyway, the drawings that I did of the seashell, when I finished them, I was surprised to recognize whatever it was. We say, oh, I recognize myself in that. And what is it that we're recognizing in our artworks when we see something, we think, oh, that's working. For me, I was able to kind of see something that was important to me reflected in how I had made that seashell. And so I went on to use that sense of whatever I located in the seashell to find other objects to draw and paint. And the shadow was always a way of kind of grounding the object, in that it was a way of kind of locating it within a kind of a field, and it felt like a necessary anchor, some kind of emotional grounding, to hold that shell in place within a kind of a more neutral zone, if you like. And so it had an emotional weight as well as the visual kind of weight. The shadow was always so, I don't know, it felt always very free to draw the shadow, because it wasn't really tied to the depiction that was located in the object. It was more a kind of a smearing of color and paint, so it wasn't tied exactly to depiction to the same degree that I needed to kind of draw the object. And so whatever I located in the shadow in those very early days has kind of continued with me, and morphed into different kind of forms of darkness, if you like, or of blurring or something like that. So when you talk about the metaphysical, I suppose it stems from that very early experience of doing a shadow.
I was talking to somebody recently about, they called it the love of objects, people that love objects, and I was thinking about Gustav and how he often made objects almost animate, and you've made these dresses, which are objects which we can animate, we can get into. And is there a kind of logic going on here to do with?
Well, when I was talking about that black skirt painting, there was something about, there's something so, if you think about the word painting, it's both a noun and a verb. It's something that you look at and something that you do. And so when you're in the moment of making a painting, you're in the moment of kind of being immersed in a performance, in an action, and you're connected to the surface of the canvas via the brush and the palette, and you're moving and kind of making it happen. And when you put down the brush, you kind of detach yourself from the canvas and you step back and you're out of that immersive moment of making. And there was something in the image of that early image of the skirt where you really see the brush marks and you see the kind of the gesture, so that as you're being keyed to the item of clothing, you're also looking at something that has been made and seeing the action of the making present in the image itself. And this business about painting, of what it is like to make the painting and to look at the painting, are really fascinating to me. And so the idea of where you are being immersed in a painting, in the action of it, as opposed to being outside of that and looking at that, is something that has followed me over the years, and is present in many of the images and the motifs and the way of making painting that are in the show downstairs. And the dresses are very recent kind of event, if you like, and when you see them hanging on the wall, it's like an object painting, it's a thing to look at, but you can actually wear these paintings, so it's as if you are stepping into the painting itself and becoming involved in some kind of performative zone and immersive zone to do with the painting. So they're very much connected through a long line of thinking and fascination with the nature of painting itself, but just in this particular new form of it.
And that's the storyboard is telling you this, isn't it? The storyboard painting.
The storyboard painting is called A Day in the Studio, and it was a painting that I did when I was trying to kind of find a way of painting people, because as a still life painter, people are very elusive to me. I find it very difficult to paint people. I'm much happier and more comfortable dealing with objects. But I found different ways, of different strategies over the years of painting people, and they first sort of crept in on objects like the Japanese print, one of which is downstairs, and because on the Japanese print it's first and foremost an object, which is a sheet of paper, but what's characterizing the surface of that object is the print, which involves the geisha, if you like, or equally postage stamps were another way of getting people in to the work. So the stamp would be the object, but people on the stamp would, be a way of characterizing that. But anyway, when I thought about developing or introducing people into the work, where I had a need to have them there, in the late 90s, I thought, well, why not start with myself? And so I turned the sheets of paper into kind of a storyboard where it talks about what it's like to spend the day in the studio making a painting. And so you see, in this painting downstairs, you'll see the figure, which is me, getting up in the morning and getting ready to go to the studio. This is when my studio was outside the place where I worked. And arriving at the studio and all the rituals that you do to start the day. You get into your studio clothes, you make the coffee, you maybe turn on the music, and then finally through all these rituals you're in the mood to kind of engage with the painting. And then it shows me finally at the end of the day packing up and going home. So the painting itself is picturing the performance of the painting as well, as becoming the thing that you look at.
The geisha corner, the sad geisha and the very happy young geishas. I think for me it kind of epitomises your use of materials to kind of tell a story. That the happy geishas, the young giggling ones, and that they're kind of the paint is fun, but it's kind of plastic. It's kind of new, and the sad, grieving geisha, the one that's on her way out, is that everything's happening to that pigment, isn't it, to tell you that story.
Yes, and well, that was the geishas sort of. The geishas followed on through a series of paintings from the day in the studio, when I thought, well, how can I make a painting that is where I'm able to explore my own emotional states, if you like, or things that, or my reaction to the world that might come out beyond the studio. And I felt that I needed a kind of an alter ego to do that. And through my enjoyment of the Japanese print and through my frequent trips to Japan over the years, I've used lots of different kind of motifs of Japanese imagery in my work over the years. And so through the painting of the Japanese prints, the idea of kind of making a troupe of geishas that were of my own invention became a possibility to explore something about narrative and storytelling and emotions, really. And so so the geishas got up to all sorts of adventures over the course of a year, and they went on all sorts of adventures and had desperate things happen to them, and wonderful things happen to them, and gloomy things happen to them, but they were all painted in a very juicy linseed driven oil paint, very gestural and very alla prima. So the paintings happen very fast, and they were built up over a number of goes, if you like, but each time I went at them they were very, very fast. And then I painted this series for about a little over a year, and I thought, am I ever going to finish with these geishas? They're just going on forever. And I thought that the only way that I could really sort of bring a halt to them, because they were beginning to make me feel a little bit trapped, was to kill one of them off. And so I killed one, but it could have been a fake death. We never know with these geishas. Anyway, the painting was a quote of Manet's The Dead Toreador, and I realized that then, in order to portray this ending or this conclusion, that the linseed oil paint medium was absolutely the wrong kind of emotional feel for these paintings, and I needed a very, very different kind of material approach to dealing with this kind of situation. And I remembered, as I was saying, as I described in my talk, the use of the compressed charcoal, which is a favorite drawing material, and thought that blackness, that dense blackness, it resonated with me in terms of that it would be a good expression for mourning. And so I consulted a very interesting guy who works at AP Fitzpatrick in London. I don't know if you know this art supply shop, but they're very knowledgeable about materials. And I simply said, you know, I'm after this effect of compressed charcoal, but I want it in a painting form. And we worked together to find a kind of a powder pigment here, bound in this kind of material here. And we used it. I used it to make a kind of a paste that I could rub onto the canvas. And so it was a really interesting moment to think that to convey the feeling, because feeling counts for everything, in my view, with the painting, and to convey the feeling that the material presence was absolutely key. And another example of that was in a series of paintings I made of London, where I thought about I wanted to convey something about what it was like to move through London as a city. And the oil on canvas absolutely didn't seem like the right choice of materials to convey something of the brashness and the crudeness or roughness that you can get with some sort of journeys through London. And that led me to kind of start to work with house gloss paint on MDF board. And the impact of the gloss paint on the MDF board met with the kind of motif of the London images was a much better kind of, it felt right in terms of the sense of an experience that I was after. I mean, paint is such an extraordinary material in all its different guises, and how you can work with it to kind of, you know, find an equivalent form for your feelings, you know, and your thoughts and ideas. Pretty amazing material, how you can do that. And the fact that there's so many different paints available now to look at and explore, from spray paints, industrial paints, oil paints, powder pigment. I mean, it's an incredibly rich way of working.
And those mirror paintings are a new way of working for you as well, aren't they?
Yes, well, the mirror paintings stemmed from, there's one of the geisha paintings we'll see down there that after, in the mourning series, when after my poor geisha died or pretended to die, it sort of opened up a period of kind of searching or looking for something or doubting things. And the mirror, of course, became a very interesting motif in order for me to explore something about what doubt was or what search was, or again, a favorite subject, longing for something. And I only did a few of those paintings with the geisha looking in the mirror, that was in about 2003, and just last summer I became interested in the mirror again in recent work that I've been doing, which is exploring how the self is kind of formed. The dresses and the shoes and all of that business are ways that you kind of explore self, and the